Hey everyone, this is going to be a no notes, hopefully fairly rapid fire recap of what I read in October. I did participate in Spookoplathon and I was very successful, but I did also read a bunch of KU books that were not used for prompts for Spookoplathon. So I also wanted to talk about those, but since I don't have notes, I can't tell you what all the ones I read are. So that might have to be a separate clip later. I have some stats because I forgot to do them the first time around. And then I'm going to get into all of the KU books that I read in the month of October. So October was probably, and like I expect it will remain by far the best reading month of the year, both in number of books and pages read. I participated in Spookoplathon, which was created and run by Becca from Becca and the Books. And I knew that if she was going to do it again this year, because I participated last year, but obviously didn't have a channel. And I had a really good time. And I knew that if she was going to do it again, I was going to participate and I was going to read a bunch of stuff. And only one of these KU books counted towards my Spookoplathon reads. So I was reading these books on top of physical books in my house. I was consuming a lot of books in every possible way I could. Let's get into it. So I read 42 books this month, which was 11,283 pages. I certainly didn't read this many last year, partly because I was not also binging KU books left and right at the same time. Yeah, I would read several books during the day, over several days as well. And I knew that I was going to be really, really focused on reading and getting as much reading done as I could, in whatever spare time I had. So I knew I was going to be really successful. I didn't think I was going to be this successful. So as far as formats go, I read ebooks, manga, standardly, standard, is that a word? You know how those, it just didn't sound right in my head. Standardly formatted novels. And then I read so I don't know what to call it. I guess I would just call it graphic novel. One of them is a graphic novel, and then one of them is a collection of Sunday comics. So I don't know. I guess it would fall under the umbrella of graphic novel. So that's what we're going with. I sourced my books from KU, Kindle Unlimited, Tango, Barnes & Noble, Kinokuniya, Fairy Loot, Illumicrate, and then there was one gifted and several that I already owned. For the genres, I read from fantasy, romance, sci-fi, a couple mystery, thriller type books, a couple general fiction, and then one horror. And these are stats for all of the books and not just the KU books that I'm going to talk about in a second. I don't think there's no way. We're already 6 days into November. I've read a single book. And then I'm traveling in December. So there's absolutely no way that I'm going to replicate or surpass this, which honestly is totally fine. It felt really good to read this many and get through a bunch of books, but it's something that's not sustainable. So that being said, let me tell you about the KU books that I read. These are actually in the order in which I read them. So the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books are the remainder of the Clickanian series by Victoria Aveline. and I don't think she's done. I She can't be done. I think there's no, I definitely looked it up, and I think there's the next one is coming out maybe early next year, maybe January. I hope it's January. So I read Tempting Alzed, and this is one where they like meet in the woods and he protects her from like a creature that is attacking her, and they are forced to pretend to be engaged and like mated so she isn't forced into marriage in this like new city, and he isn't thrown in jail for saving her life because he ended up killing the creature that was attacking her. It turns out to be like not like a sacred animal, maybe like a protected animal in this city. Yeah, so they have to do that. And then the next one is okay, I'm going to pronounce the name incorrectly probably. It's using Feijo. I think they yeah, I think in the book they said it was Feiho. I don't know why that doesn't sound right in my head. So like in my head it's Feijo, and I feel really bad because the author like took the time to put that in there, like how to pronounce his name. And I'm like, brain, please, brain, please. But unfortunately, that's kind of how it is in my head. So she wants to get back to Earth, and he is a pilot or a captain for like he owns his own interplanetary vessel, like as like a long term trader. And she marries him to try and use one of his stops to like escape and get a ride back to Earth. He is also working with the queen of the city where most of the women are living to take down a smuggler he used to work for, and things go down alongside her attempts to get back to Earth. The next book in the series is Resisting Maxu. He always manages to come up with some sort of infraction that's like minor enough to keep him out of jail and have like serious long-term consequences, but major enough to disqualify him from the marriage ceremony. And he is in the process of making himself ineligible when he crosses paths with his mate. And she is on her way around the planet with a group of several other women as like human envoys, as like a meet and greet with the rest of the planet. And he has to follow her from place to place to convince her to be with him. And he also thinks that she knows he's her mate and is tormenting him. So they don't get off to the greatest start when they do meet. And then there's also like kind of a surprise twist at the end with like other world events that has like implications going into the next book. The next book is called Ruling Sick Band. He is the king of his. Don't know if it's. I don't know if they're. It sounds like they're different cities, and there's like a king or queen of the city. I, it's not like I'm just gonna refer to it as a city state. So he is the king of his city state and is like hyper vigilant by necessity because of like past assassination attempts, and then also like an attempt to force like a fake mating bond, which was going to lead to an assassination attempt. She is left behind in his city after the events of the previous book, and due to some of like the interplanetary conflicts going on, he thinks she's going to be like a good bargaining chip as one of the humans. However, they realize that some of the changes going on elsewhere on the planet are bad for both humans and Clicanians, and they form an alliance. I think this one is my favorite in the series so far. It was just like such a wonderful like culmination of all of the world building and political intrigue that had been building up throughout the rest of the novels, like throughout the rest of the series. And then I really liked the relationship between the main characters. Like, he's just like bitter and jaded and like just thinks that everyone is out to get him. Like, he keeps everyone like not even arm's length. It's like a football field's length. Like, you cannot get close to him. Like, there are two people that he trusts. I really enjoyed the journey of the couple. So yeah. And it just I don't know, it was so good. I'm so obsessed with this series. Then the last one is you could probably read this after using Fejo. This one is called Releasing Melodec, and it's a little bit shorter. It's still over like 200 pages, like 200 KU pages, but it's a little bit shorter than the rest of the books in the series. So I think like paper pages, it would probably be considered a novella. It follows a side character from Using Feiho and a woman who was abducted like 10 to 15 years ago. So probably like one of the first women who was abducted that they like never knew about. She was abducted when I think she was 15 or 16 and has been living among a race of beings like for that whole amount of time that have like taken care of her and like she's kind of like assimilated into their society and she's currently working as an assistant to a prince that is on like a pleasure cruise and their ship gets caught in like a space snare and crash lands on a planet with creatures known to like lure ships to their doom and like keep anyone who survives as prisoners, but then also like take any of the resources that are on the ship as their own. She is able to evade capture, but sees like the prison that he's being held in and goes to find help. He agrees to help her if she frees him. And like because she's like familiar with alien society, she like isn't weirded out by things. And yeah, that was a really fun time as well. I think it's actually another one of my favorites from the series. And it was like a nice addition to like the overall extended world. If you do what I did and read it kind of last of like what's out, by the time you get to this point, you're familiar with the overall premise, so it's really easy to get into, and you could probably read it after the Feo book because I don't think there were any spoilers for the next two books afterwards. I had a fabulous time. I was looking on her website and I might I might need to like order some of these books to have actual copies because I like them so much. Yeah, like full 10 out of 10 recommend these series. Like it's such a fun time. It scratches an itch, but it's really well done. And like this is coming from someone who hated Ice Planet Barbarians. Pretty similar premise of like women are taken from Earth to be sold into like sex slavery basically and crash land on a planet. And I'm really looking forward to the next installment. Let's just say that. The next book that I read was Desire in His Blood by Zoe Draven. This is kind of like winged vampires in space. She is the oldest daughter of a prominent family on this other planet, and she agrees to an arranged marriage to save her family from debtors. He is a Kylor, who are a race of beings that have wings and drink blood. They do also eat food, but blood gives them more like energy isn't the right word, but like power, I guess. There's a lot of infighting amongst different factions, and he's from some of the most elite and powerful, and also from the wealthiest area of the planet. Like his family controls that area. So he's basically a space billionaire. And then the planet itself is like very restrictive about who can come to their planet. So not a ton is known about them other than rumors. And he does have an ulterior motive for marrying her that you find out about later on. And he's definitely kind of an asshole towards her at the beginning. So just a heads up. It does get better. He gets over himself. It's set in the same universe as her Horde King series, but it's not like a specific like crossover. Like there were just like the Horde King planet, there's a race of beings, and those same race of beings show up in this book as well. It was a good time. I think there's a second book in the series that I have checked out from KU, but I haven't read it yet. The next book is The Marriage Hex. I don't know if this was a debut or not. You know those marriage pacts that you make with someone where you agree to marry each other if neither of you are married by a certain age? This is basically that, but like magically binding. The two main characters are at this home slash orphanage for odd children. I don't know if he knew that he was a werewolf at this point. And like the man who runs it is characterized as some sort of like collector of supernatural children and not in like a perverted way. I not yeah, I don't know. It was kind of glossed over. They are best friends, and on her 16th birthday, like midnight on her 16th birthday, he brings her a cupcake and they make a pact to marry. And like that's something she kind of like wishes for, like as she's blowing out the candle. What they didn't realize at the time was that it was like a binding hex. And then also at the same time, her magic emerges. And then the next day, she is whisked away by her grandmother to go live with their witch coven outside of New Orleans. And she's told like she can't try and contact her best friend. 14 years later, he takes over the wolf pack that is from the same town, and they don't get along with her coven. So they're kind of like rivals at this point. And then days later, the hex takes effect and like forces them together. So it's kind of like magical force proximity. The relationship was cute, and there was a greater mystery to uncover that added like a nice background conflict. I will say this needed another round of editing. There were several line edits that needed to happen, and like even incidents of like the wrong word being used. There's a very specific example where the word array is used when they really meant awry, like plans have gone awry, and instead it was plans have gone array, and it just that's not the right word. It doesn't make sense. And then I also thought that the shift between some of the romantic and relationship building scenes and then like the wider mystery scenes was a little jarring, more in the sense that like each piece was good and well done, but they weren't fully meshed together to create a cohesive whole. It almost felt like two books like mashed together, like copy pasted and not like woven. Does that make sense? I would definitely consider reading more from this author as the series goes on, but I think she would get like one more chance, like especially if some of the editing mistakes or missed edits weren't caught in like a second book. I don't know that I would continue. I think a good comp series would be the Stay a Spell series by Juliet Cross if you are looking for a witch werewolf romance or like paranormal romance set in New Orleans. I think that's like a pretty good comp series. And that has, I think, 6 books. And I think it's a completed series. So yeah. So the next 2 books that I read are in the same world. The first one is The Orc and the Innkeeper. This one follows an innkeeper who is struggling, like she has like a magical inn. She is struggling financially, and then he is an orc who is trying to expand his brewery distribution into the human world. It's set in a town that's full of like paranormal slash fantasy creatures, so like orcs, centaurs, minotaurs, gargoyles, sirens, you name it. And the distributor that he speaks to is pretty biased against supernatural beings. And like he asks, like, oh, is there a human on like the business side of things? And he's like, no, I run my own business. And but then he also turns around and claims to have a human. I think he claims that it's a fiance. He has a human fiance that like helps run business sides or something like that. And then she has just gotten a quote for repairs that are going to cost a ton of money and like ruin her financially. And she overhears their conversation and then offers to act as his fiance if he will pay for the repairs to her inn. The main relationship tension comes from the fact that he used to be one of her bullies when they were in school. And he has wanted to apologize to her for a while and like finally takes the opportunity to do so while they're fake dating, and then like their relationship progresses from there. So, the next one in that series is called The Gargoyle and the Songbird. This one follows the best friend from the previous book, who is a siren and an emerging musician. She's been having issues with a stalker, so her manager hires a gargoyle bodyguard for her, and she returns to their magical town for her best friend's wedding, and they get snowed into town by a magical snowstorm. So they're stuck for like extra long. There's other kind of background issues going on with him and with her, and that like kind of interfere with their budding romance. Both of these were pretty fun and they're on the shorter side, so they are pretty quick reads. And the magical town gives me similar vibes to the Haven Ever After series. I'm blanking on the author's name, but I read it earlier this year and it's also on KU. And that one I think has 4 or 5 books. I think maybe five. I think five. The next book I read was a soccer romance called Close Knit. This follows an American goalie. He's just transferred to a new team in the UK. He's one of like 3 American players to play in the UK. And like he's home visiting his family when they meet at the beginning of the book, and like they hit it off before like eventually hooking up and going their separate ways. She is a knitting influencer. She has like a knitting social media channel and everything, and she has decided to make this year a yes year. She's decided to move to London for several months. One of her moms is British, so she has dual citizenship, and the building where her flat is was coincidentally also the like team management bought up the rest of the flats around her and turned them into housing for some of the players on his new team, including him. And they when they meet again, he accuses her of stalking him, which like obviously she's not, because she was like, I had no idea who you were. I don't watch soccer. Like what the hell are you talking about? And so he tries to avoid her whenever possible. There's like a common area in the building, and so she starts hanging out with his team members and they all love her. He is very, very standoffish with his new teammates due to past bullying and hazing from teammates and coaches at his previous team. And there's a lot of trauma there that affects how he interacts with his new teammates and coaches, how he deals with the media and like being recognized in public, and how he deals with conflicts that arise in his like interpersonal relationships. I really enjoyed this. The main relationship was really cute, and I loved her relationships with his teammates. And I think this was like a really important discussion on like bullying in athletics. whether it's like full on like abuse or just like isolating incidences. It's a really important discussion. If you have ever experienced this, which I have, you know those books where like instead of like triggering or upsetting, they're more empowering. Like this was on the empowering side, and I thought it was really well done. I think the rest of the books are going to focus on his sibling relationships, like the relationships, not his relationships with his siblings, but like their romantic relationships. But I really hope we see more of his teammates because a lot of them were really, really cute. I thought it was good, and we'll definitely be reading more from this author. The next book that I read was For Better or Worse. This was the one that I actually read for one of the Spookoplathon prompts. And we follow a woman who is a former wedding objector turned death doula. The last gig that she took as a wedding objector was to object at this really high end wedding. And she felt really like icky and gross afterwards. So she quit the business. And she is currently a death doula where she provides end of life services for people with terminal illnesses. And her current client is this like wealthy hotel mogul with brain cancer who wants to take his family on one last big family holiday to Hawaii. And it turns out that his grandson is the groom that she interrupted 3 years prior. There is a gap in that. I think it was 3 years, maybe it was two, but there's a gap of 2 to 3 years. They are thrown together for 2 chaotic weeks, and she realizes that she was duped into objecting at his wedding. She needed proof that they were like cheating or doing something shady. And the picture that she was given is like a picture of him and his sister. Like she thought it was like just like a stripper or something. So she's like she feels like really really bad. Like now that especially now that she knows that she was tricked into doing this. And then he realizes that she is not as bad as he has made her out to be in his mind, and then like also saved him from a marriage he didn't truly want because it was more of like a business marriage. And then for him, it also helps that she genuinely cares for his grandfather and like doesn't put up with his family's bullshit. I have three more. I think this one is the second book, technically. I really enjoyed this one. She actually reminded me of one of my really good friends. And I was like, I keep forgetting to text her and be like, hey, you should read this because this is basically you. The next one I read was another sports romance, but hockey this time. I read The Wingman. It's the third book in the Vancouver Storm series by Stephanie Archer. I read the first two books earlier this year, and this one follows two best friends. He's been in love with her since they met in college, but his friend asked her out first, and they just broke up. So he volunteers to be her wingman, like dating practice guru to get her back out in the dating world again. She was somewhere else. I think she was in Calgary, but so she moved back to Vancouver and like moved in with him as well. And like he's so gone for her. It's pretty perfect. I love this series so much. I think the second one might still be my favorite, but this one is very close behind that. I'm really excited for the fourth book. I think I have to wait till next year, unfortunately, because this came out in maybe the end of September. Maybe it was October, maybe early October. The ending of this one reminded me of the ending to Caught Up by Liz Tomford, but only in like the setup for the next book, if that makes sense. Like not in like the main relationship. It was very cute. I really liked it. The next book that I read was The Modern Girl's Guide to Magic. I don't remember the author for this, but I do think it's a series. I think it's called like the Charming Cove series or something. This one follows a witch who's been summoned back to her hometown to compete for the local like magical plant nursery. Her magic has always been a little screwy, so she thinks it's a lost cause. And then she finds out one of the other competitors is the man who destroyed her last connection to her grandfather. But like even when they first met, she was like, "Oh, he's so cute," and she still thinks that. And like she does confront him. She's like, "Why would you do this?" So she comes back to town after like several years away and deals with like high school bullies and like that sort of thing. It's set in like this small hidden magical village called Charming Cove in the UK. It was such a nice like small seaside town kind of setting. I would probably read more from the series. I think I looked up the next one and it was like a vampire, and I was like, okay, that's not where I thought this was going, but okay. I haven't really looked into like the next installments very much. So, yeah, I need to do that. The issues and like resolution for her magic kind of reminded me of A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon, and kind of the overall premise, because in that one she also was struggling with like controlling her magic, and then like realizes kind of the same thing about her magic as in A Modern Girl's Guide to Magic. I really liked Boris, who is her grumpy badger familiar. Like I'm picturing like Danny DeVito in badger form. That was what I was picturing. Like Phil from Hercules, but as a badger. That's it. That was it. That was it. That was it. There is sex on page, but it's like 5 sentences and not like a whole like smutty scene or like series of smutty scenes. And like I'd kind of that was kind of the vibe I was getting after like getting like a second kiss like 2/3 of the way through, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be like minimal. Yeah, so minimal spice. I suspect that's probably gonna be how it is going through the rest of the series, which I like smutty books. This one isn't, it's not closed door. I would be way less inclined to consider picking it up if it was closed door, but it's not. So the last one is Drive Me Wild by Carly Robin. This is a Formula One romance. She is the social media slash marketing head for the team, and he's one of the drivers. He is a notorious flirt and has always flirted with her. Of course, she thinks he's hot, and like they're basically BFFs. And she's finally single after having a long term boyfriend for a while. They have a drunken hookup, and he wants to have a repeat, but she is hesitant. Part of that stems from like her having just gotten out of a relationship and like feeling like she kind of like lost herself in that relationship and kind of like wanting to rediscover her own identity. And then there's other work things for both of them going on in the background that put pressures on their relationship. He has like major golden retriever energy. It's a similar vibe to the wingman where he's been waiting for the right opportunity to get his lady, just without the dating practice trope. Yeah, definitely a second win for me from this author. So I'm going to keep reading them as they come out. I will see y'all in the rest of the video and or the next one, depending on where this goes in like the order of the video. We're gonna go through I have this stack, this stack right here. So we're gonna run through those really quick, and I'll just kind of give some impressions, try and summarize them quickly. Let's do it. These are also not in order. I just had to stack them kind of willy nilly. So we'll start with Seven Faceless Saints by M.K. Lobb. This follows Damien, who is the head of security at the Palazzo, which is it's like the main like religious center of the city. And there's like the whole history of the city is based around these seven saints, and like that's how the city was founded and created. And then at some point there was like a big like rift, and one of the saints called Chaos was eradicated or like put to sleep or something. And like all of their disciples, like all of the saints' disciples were hunted down because the disciples of each saint inherit magic, like abilities from the saint, and are able to like do certain things, and they're like supposed to have all these great works and all of that. And the what are the like not they're not like unblessed, but like I forget what they are. Unblessed is not the right word. Like anyone who hasn't been like blessed by the saints with power are considered like lesser than, and a lot of them are sent to the front line of this war that's been going on for 20 years. And there's kind of this rebellion brewing because all of these people are tired of fighting for saints that like when they get treated by second like they're second class citizens. So hey baby boy, how you doing? Oh my gosh, my man. Look at this baby. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. Look at him. Look at him. Look at his boy. What are you doing, baby bean? Oh my gosh. Hi. Look at him. Damien has just been brought home from the front lines, and he is forced to work with the girl that he loved before he went to the front lines. Stuff happened, and he basically stopped speaking to her, sending her letters, like communicating with her at all. But and like she's still like really pissed off about that, and they teamed together to get to the bottom of some grisly murders that have been happening around the city. Yeah, so it's like a little bit like religious and military drama and history, but also like a murder mystery. I had a really good time. I thought it was well done. I do think the sequel is out, and I don't know that Fairy Loot has announced that they're going to do the sequel. So I'm kind of curious about that. So yeah, we'll see. Had a good time. If you are into murder mysteries and kind of a fantasy-ish world with like war, rebellion, religious overtones, then this might be for you. It did also help that Damien is also my husband's name, so I had a good time. The next book I'll talk about is A House with Good Bones. This is by T. Kingfisher. So this is like a Southern Gothic, like horror-y novel. It follows a woman named Sam who moves back to her mom's house, which they inherited from her grandmother. So Sam's mom's mom. And like she's forced to go live at home after she is an archaeologist. I think she works with bugs. So she works on like dig sites, and the project like the dig that she's supposed to go on like got delayed for whatever reason. She's forced to go home, and like her mom seems like is acting weird. She's like painted the house bland colors after they spent a ton of time livening it up. And then there's vultures like hovering around the house. And like one day while she's like in the garden, Sam finds a jar of teeth. And like that's in the synopsis. Yeah, she finds a jar of teeth hidden beneath the magazine worthy rose bushes, and vultures are circling the garden from above. So that didn't happen by like page 60. And this is like 250 pages, not even 243 pages. It felt like a slower start. And then I am not a huge horror person. So I do generally like Southern Gothic, and I did like the writing. It just felt like a slow start to get to like the inciting incident that's like listed in the synopsis. And then it got like real it got like real fucking weird. This one was not totally for me. I liked the writing style, so I would definitely try something else by T. Kingfisher. So I have Nettle and Bone, and then I have A Sorceress Comes to Call, which I didn't pick up during Spookoplathon, but we'll see how those go, and hopefully I find something that works for me from her. And I might see if my sister wants this one. I also picked up Sakamoto Days Volume 13. This gets a little bit more into the history of like young Sakamoto and kind of like his start as an assassin and like some of the events that took place like as he was graduating the school and like some of the friends and connections he had like during that time. I don't know when the next one comes out. I do know that there's an anime coming out, I think in January, sometime in 2025. Maybe it was April. I think it was January though. So, pretty excited to see that. I picked up Marriage Toxin Volume 4, which I really enjoyed. I think this is like the start of kind of a new arc. A little, maybe not like new arc, but like a new conflict. I really enjoyed it. I'm still really liking this series. I think the next one of these comes out in January, and I have that one pre-ordered. So I read Story of Koku Volume 1. So I had watched the anime of this back in like high school. Maybe I might have been in college, but yeah. So this follows Shure, who she comes from like a really prestigious family, and her father works in the archives in the palace, and like her family's like she's from like the main branch of like the family that like one of the like founding families of the country. They've fallen on hard times and like have kind of like a crumbling estate. She's offered this opportunity to go to the palace and help convince the new emperor that he should take a little bit more interest and like more of an active role in ruling the country. And she like enters the palace like as his like consort. Like she's not going there like interested in marrying him. She's there interested in like making him like do stuff. Like do like run the country basically. Like they meet and like she does all this like she like kind of encourages him. Yeah, it's kind of just the start of the series. I love the show and I would like to continue with this. It's a bean. Oh yeah, that's your paper, huh? Hi baby. Hi baby. Do you need me to open the window? Oh yeah. Okay. Look at this little leg. Yeah, I I would like to continue. If you like Apothecary Diaries and kind of like the like court setting, you might like this. I have fun. The next book I picked up is Cats in Spring Rain, which is just like a little book full of haikus about cats and like Japanese art involving cats. So yeah, this was a cute time. And it's really nice because it like lists the artist and then like in the poems, it gives like the original Japanese in like kanji, or I assume kanji, and then what, hiragana, is that the like anglicized Japanese, and then the English version, and then the author. So that's nice. I do wish some of like the companion art was a little more specific to the poem, but I think they were probably going for like excellence with both. So, yeah. The next one I read was The Watsons. This is like an uncompleted work by Jane Austen. It is only 50 pages, and it's only like a partial book by her. This is definitely not my favorite. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. You're not going to play with it? What are you doing? Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, Cecil. So this follows Emma, who like she was living with an aunt. Aunt got remarried, or the her uncle passed away. Aunt got remarried a couple years later, and the husband was in Ireland and like didn't want to take Emma with them. So the husband was Irish, whatever. You get my meaning. And she goes home to like back to live with her family. I think she has two sisters. Her older sister Elizabeth is like there to like take care of their dad, who is like kind of ailing and a little bit of an invalid. It's hard for him to get around, and like when he does get around, he's like very drained. And so Elizabeth is like telling Emma all about like the society of the neighborhood, and who she should avoid and like try and interact with in terms of like men folk. I think if she had finished it, it could have been entertaining. I still don't think it would have been my favorite, but yeah, it was one that I had read in college because I took a Jane Austen class as like one of my last electives, and yeah, I was like, do I really need to keep this? And I wanted to reread it before I got rid of it. So I have, and now I'm fine to get rid of it. The next book that I read was Queen Bee by Juno Dawson. This is a prequel to the Her Majesty's Royal Coven series. I don't know if that is the name of the series or not, but yeah. So this is a little bit more historical feeling because it is set, like it starts in the aftermath of Anne Boleyn's execution, and then like looks at kind of like her rise to fame and power. It was only like 170 pages, something like that. So it was pretty short. Definitely a good installment. I do kind of wonder if some of the things that were in here are going to have like repercussions for the main series, or if this was just kind of like a fun background history. So we'll see. I need to read the second book in the series, but I think what I might do is just wait because I read the first book last year, like 18 months ago even. So we'll see. I also read Castle in the Air by Diana Wynne Jones. This is the sequel to House Moving Castle. It follows Abdullah, who is a carpet merchant, and he gets sold this carpet, this like magic carpet. He's like a daydreamer, and he's sleeping on top of the carpet one night and wakes up in this beautiful garden with this beautiful princess, and chaos kind of ensues from there. You don't necessarily realize that it's like Howlin' Sophie and Calcifer that you're interacting with, but it's got the same like quirky humor, same like style and flavor of magic. Abdullah is like since he's a salesman, he uses lots of really flowery language. And yeah, so it was a good time. It was a reread for me. So, but I hadn't read it in probably like 10 plus years. So I I was really glad to get back to the world, especially after I reread Howells earlier this year. I DNF'd Simon Tov. I got like 50 or 60 pages into it, and there's like angels and demons and a murder, and she's a police officer, I think, in Israel. I don't know. It is a translated work, and I don't know if the writing didn't work for me because it was translated or because that's just kind of the way this author writes. I was not vibing, and yeah, I did not get exceptionally far into this book. I did kind of like skim ahead a little bit, but it just like I don't know. It wasn't working for me. Yeah, and then there's like also weird family dynamics and like past partners, and I just wasn't working for me. Another one that absolutely did not work for me was You Look Better as a Ghost. I got like 35 pages into this and was like, what the fuck is happening? It's basically like a female serial killer who is just like at every single little inconvenience or thing that she doesn't like, she's like, I could kill you right now. Like in her head. And she like plans out how to do it and does it, and but then like gets framed for I don't know. It kind of reminded me of Dexter, and I didn't enjoy Dexter either. I watched like part of an episode of Dexter and was like, good. So yeah, was hoping I would like that a little bit more than I did. I also read the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy by Stephanie Garber. I had Once Upon a Broken Heart was a reread, and then I read the sequels for the first time. I do have a video coming out eventually about this series and kind of deeper feelings. So I will do a further explanation there, this series, and kind of how I feel about it. This is a random thought. I was looking at this, the N, and I was like, oh, that's a music note. And then I'm like sitting here thinking, like, I don't really remember there being a ton of music in the second book. So like why is that there? Like why was that a design choice? Was it I so yeah. Anyway, so read that. Made progress on more series and more subscription books. I did also pick up Witch Hat Atelier Kitchen. And this is basically just like the same story, same character, same art, same like coziness, same or like maybe not coziness. Well, this is cozy. This part is cozy because they're literally cooking. But same just kind of like everyday like life and a little bit of whimsy. And then there's also recipes at the end of each chapter. So that was really nice. And it's just like the daily life of the witches and nothing in the outside conflict that's going on in the rest of the series. I think it would be fun to like read more of these, but like as the series progresses and gets darker as it goes. A nice surprise was Long Live Evil. I had a really good time with this. This follows a young woman who has been fighting cancer for several years and like is not doing very well. And this person enters her room one night and is like, hey, you could go into this fictional world and do this thing. And the fictional world is like her and her sister's like favorite story. She agrees, but she arrives in the body of the villainess and has to like figure out how to save herself and like change the story so she can get back to the real world. And the author was writing this while she was also battling cancer. So it feels like very personal. I do think this is very much not for everyone. I had a really good time. I think the the humor hit well for me, and I do think that if you don't like more like meta leaning kind of on the nose books, this might not be for you. And the other thing was that she's like kind of in denial that these people are like real. She's like, no, this is just a fictional world. And like if the other caveat was that if she didn't complete the task that the being gave her, she would get stuck in this world. And she was like, oh, okay, whatever. And like basically her body outside would die. Yeah, and so she's like kind of she spends the majority of the book like really in denial that the people in this world aren't fictional, like that they like don't have agency and like desires and wants and things, and so she like leans into like her villain era pretty hard, and she like slowly realizes that I don't know that she does too much growing in this book, but I think in the next I I'm guessing that she will have some growth there with that. Immediately at the end of this, I was like, is there a sequel? When is the sequel coming out? And this came out in August, so I'm very ready for it. Had a fantastic time. Again, I don't think it's like there's a musical number in here, so very much not for everyone, but I had a fantastic time. I also picked up The Coldest Touch. This was like an additional book in like a really early fairy loot that I got. And this follows Elise, who is like the new death oracle, but she thinks she's cursed because she doesn't know what's going on. And basically, she can, if she touches someone, she experiences how they're going to die. And Claire is a vampire who's been tasked to like help bring her up to speed by the organization that she works for. There's a lot of other backstory, but this is set in like a high school. Not totally for me, and uh, partly just I'm not a high schooler. So the writing was good, and then this was probably like really middle of the road. Like, not to say that it was bad. Like, I just am not the target audience, and it's not something I would reread, partly because of that. But it was a pretty good time. I also read We All Fall Down. I cannot tell you what went on in this book because I left a little more confused than when I started. It's like partially our world, but partially not. If you've seen reviews about this for like when it came out, it's also like been fairly controversial because there's like a white woman who accuses a black man who she like 100% knows did not do something because she knows who did and is trying to protect them. But she accuses this black man of a crime and he gets like harassed by the police for it. And it follows four main characters: the black man and the white woman are two of those main characters. There's another like half human, half octopus woman, and a I think it's a trans person, but they can like once they get to this city, they are able to like magically change genders at will. I don't know. The city was ruled by magic for a while, but then magic kind of like died out. There's not like a ton of it left. So like the void left by magic has been filled by like a new research university, but it's also like kind of a creepy research university because like they research oddities, and when you go in, like you don't really come out. So like they do a lot of medical experiments on you, and that's kind of going on in the background. Plus, at one point, the young black man, his name is David, I think, he gets stopped by the police for like being in a place in time, like existing. Like they like don't believe that he works for the university, and they're like they I don't know. They just kind of it's just like they just stop him for no reason. So it's like police harassment on top of it. And then like the main plot line of the story is that policemen are dying and you're like, oh, okay. You haven't made me care about them. This will be leaving along with several others. I picked up Cat Gamer, and this was adorable. This follows a woman, she's an office worker, 29-year-old office worker. She like gets all of her work done to clock out like right at 5 and go home and play video games. And then someone found, oh my goodness, Cecil. I don't know if you heard any of that, but he had a lot to say. Someone found a kitten in the parking lot at work, and she volunteers to take it home. It was adorable. Like, and she's never had a pet before, so she's like, what do I do? So it's kind of just like trials and tribulations with this new feline companion. So plus he's a Tex, and that's what I have. So it's very cute. I also read Library of the Dead by T.L. Huchu. This was a reread, mainly to see if I wanted to continue with the series. So this follows Ropa, who is, I don't know, 14 or something. She's fairly young. And she lives in Edinburgh, and she goes around town like exorcising ghosts, communicating with ghosts, anything like that, to like taking messages to loved ones for the ghost. And then a ghost stops her and is like, hey, my son is missing, like can you find him? And so she goes on this hunt and then does some research in like this magic library, and something has happened. So something has made Edinburgh like less friendly. I don't know. We don't get a ton of like background on that, or else I'm just not remembering it. I do think that I am not going to be continuing with the rest of the series, and if I do, I will be getting it from the library. I do really like that it was like a younger protagonist, and I do always like ghosty kind of stories. So I picked up Apothecary Diaries Volume 1. This follows Mau Mau, who has been kidnapped and sold into servitude in the palace, and all of the hijinks that ensue. She also has trained as an apothecary and like knows like poisons, and so she ultimately gets hired as like a food taster for one of the consorts. So yeah, had a good time. Watched the anime earlier this year and wanted to pick up the manga. I think season 2 comes out in January as well. So pretty excited for that. I picked up Dreadful by Caitlin Rosakis. This is a guy who wakes up in like the evil lord's lair and then realizes that he is the evil lord, but he's lost all of his memories and kind of has to reconcile like who he wants to be with like who he's been in the past and what he's going to do going forward. It was pretty cute. Would definitely recommend. This was a book that Damien picked up earlier this year. So yeah, it was a fun time. I can't say it's like a new favorite, but it was a fun time. It's kind of like a twist on a lot of the like fairy tale tropes that you see in fantasy literature, but not in like a like what was that? it was like a Delilah S. Dawson, like Kill the Farm Boy. Like I didn't like that one, but this like is like just edging on like it's like in a similar vein to that, but I like this one a lot better. All right, my camera's gonna die, so let me speed through these. So I read The Alchemist graphic novel. I did decide to get rid of both. This was a reread, and I started rereading this to double check because I remembered liking the novel a little bit better, but still just like it's fine. And like I feel like I've gotten the like message of the book, and yeah, I I don't feel like I need to hold on to either copy. So we're going to pass it along. And if I ever decide that I want to reread in the future, we're going to get it from the library. I also read volumes 2, 3, and 4 of Beyond the Clouds. This is still really cute, and it like follows kind of the adventures of Mia and Theo as they go on a journey to discover more about her powers, where she's from, all that sort of thing. And it's very cute. I picked up After Love. This was also another like extra book in Fairy Loot in a Fairy Loot box from like 2021. Ash is gay and she's come out to her mom, and then she's killed in like a hit and run, and she is offered a chance to like work for like a gang of girl reapers. Again, high school. I'm not target audience for this. And then this was the relationship, like she comes back like for her first love, and like her relationship isn't it like is like way more of the focus of the book than I thought it was going to be. So yeah, and like again, I'm not the target audience for this. So yeah, so we will eventually get rid of this. I reread Treasury of the Lost Litter Box. This follows the adventures of Rob, Satchel, and Bucky. Rob is the human, Satchel is the dog, and Bucky, this is Satchel and Rob. And then Bucky is the cat, and he's aggressive and has a lot of thoughts and schemes and plots. And Rob is just there, like, what are you doing? How do I get into arguments with you? And so it's very entertaining. It's very entertaining. I've loved this comic for a really long time, and it's like a Sunday comic type comic. So always fun to revisit. And then I think my favorite book of the month was The God and the Gumio. And this follows Honey, who is a Gumio, which is like a nine-tailed fox. And she is actually kind of like a notorious nine-tailed fox. And then it follows Soka, who is a trickster god who has fallen from the heavens and has like a punishment that he has to go like find and hunt down unruly supernatural creatures. And it's like set in our world, but it's like a supernatural like city on top of like Seoul. This is basically like a K drama in a book. And if you like K dramas, you're going to like this. I loved it. I loved it. On that note, and since my camera's going to die at any second, I'm going to go. Let me know if you read any of these, if you liked any, like what your thoughts were for these. I hope you all had a great reading month for October, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.